Okay, once again, welcome back, everybody. We're continuing on with depreciation. This time, we're going to be taking a look at double declining. All right, as we've mentioned before, the 5 components that make up depreciation are going to be your cost of the asset, your estimated useful life slash number of units produced, and we're going to be taking a look at salvage value slash residual value. Those words are interchangeable. We're definitely going to be taking a look at the date that you place into service, and we're going to be looking at the depreciation method, which in fact is going to be double declining, also known as accelerated depreciation. Now, the components that you need to be fully aware of is going to be that instead of focusing on how many units or the number that it can be used for production, we're actually going to consider the estimated useful life. Okay, what's its life expectancy? Okay, that's going to be coming into real play in here, and there will be no real measurement for the estimated numbers that it can produce or whatever. Okay, the main focus here is that we are going to be looking at the useful life. Second of things that we need to be aware of is going to be the date that you place into service. So in this case, I really want you to take real look carefully for the date that you place into service, because in this kind of depreciation method, it is very, very time sensitive. Okay? Now, of course, we've got to take a look at the 3 different depreciation methods. Once again, the list goes on and on. There's more than just this list that you see here, but that's, once again, the one that's more widely used is going to be these 3 right here, right? Units of production, straight line, and double declining. So once again, today we're focusing on the accelerated depreciation, or also known as double declining, right? These 2 words are interchangeable as well. Accelerated is primarily used for corporations. They use accelerated, which also kind of makes sense, right? You're double depreciating it or double declining it. Therefore, it's accelerating at, it's depreciating really quickly. So with that being said, let's dive right into what the formula are going to be entailed with this particular method. Now, once again, you are going to be still solving for the same formulas, right? You're still going to be solving for the depreciation basis. You're still going to solve for a depreciation rate. You're still going to solve for the depreciation expense. And then again, the last 2 that always stay constant, the depreciation, accumulated depreciation, and the book value will always stay constant. So these 2 formulas never change. The difference between the different methods is that you will be calculating by using a slightly different formula. So I've mentioned before, right? You'll see some similarities, and then you'll see some differences. So here is one of the these are going to be the differences between the previous one that we just learned and this one. So in this case, when we're looking or solving for the depreciation basis, what we're actually looking for is going to be solving for the beginning of the year's book value. So therefore, when we're dealing with the double declining, it is very important that we do solve to the very end of our table, which is to solve for our book value, because at the end of the year's book value is also going to become the beginning of the year's book value. Okay, we'll look at an example of what that looks like. Okay, this time we have a depreciation rate. It's not a per unit rate, because when we solve for per unit rate, what we did is we took the depreciation basis and we divided by the whole amount of how many items that the machine can produce. In this case, we're scrapping that idea. All I want you to know is that we're going to be focusing using the estimated useful life. So in this case, the formula for the depreciation rate is going to be 1, like the number 1, over or divided by the number of useful life. Okay? And we're going to multiply it by 2 because hence the word double declining, meaning we're going to depreciate it twice as much. Okay? So 1, okay, so 1 over the number of useful life, which makes it become a fraction, and you're going to multiply it by 2. Okay? And then last but not least, we have the depreciation expense, which is going to be the basis times the rate. Pretty straightforward. Okay? And then everything else stays the same. So let's dive into the example here. So first example here is we're going to record the depreciation for the first year. So in this case, we bought a machine that's worth a total of $15,000, okay? And it has a salvage value of $2,500, all right? Its useful life is 5 years, and the number of units that it could produce is 10,000, all right? And the date that you place into service is January 1st. So assuming, what was that? So assuming that you do depreciation at the very, very end of the year, let's go ahead and solve each part of the table. So first things first is solve for the depreciation basis. So if my depreciation basis is going to be the beginning of the year's book value, what can I assume? When I acquire my asset for the first time, and this is the first year that I'm depreciating it, what is going to be my beginning of the year's book value?
Cost of the asset?
Cost of the asset. So in this case, what is it?
15,000.
15,000, right? Because at that point, your book value is going to be what your asset is worth at that time. I just purchased it, so therefore we never depreciated at all. So therefore I never deducted or made anything changes to this asset. So my beginning of the year book value should be whatever my asset cost is. Okay? Boom, which is 15,000. Right? Now the next step says that to determine the depreciation rate, which is 1 over the estimated useful life times 2. So in this case, what am I going to be solving here? What is my depreciation rate?
1 over 5
1 over 5
times 2.
times 2. Which is?
So it'd be 5 divided by 2. 1 divided by 5
Correct.
times 2 is 44 or 4.4.
4.4 is not the correct number I'm looking for.
Should be
What's
40%.
40% or 0.4? So you were off by, I don't know where you got that extra 4 from, but 1 divided by 5, right? It's like $1 divided by 5 gives you 20 cents. Okay? And you're timesing it by 2 because you're depreciating twice as much. So in this case, it is 1 divided by 5, which is 0.2, times 2, which is 40%. So boom, it's 40%. Okay? So then, how do I solve for my depreciation expense?
It's going to be your depreciation basis times your rate.
So therefore, what is my total depreciation expense here?
6,000.
6,000. Okay? Now that's a lot to depreciate, but let's go ahead and continue on. So what's my accumulated depreciation going to be?
That would be the previous year's, which is 0 since you just bought it,
Mm-hmm.
and the current year's. So that would give you 6,000 again.
Perfect. Okay, and last but not least, how do we solve for book value?
That would be the cost of the asset minus the accumulated depreciation, which would be 9,000.
Which would be 9,000. Now, so that means at the end of the first year, the book value is now determined as $9,000. Okay? So now that I have this piece of information, right? If I were to do the depreciation for the next year, what is going to be my depreciation basis then?
Your book value from the previous year.
Correct. So from here, right, I'm solving for this. Now, of course, I know that my second year is going to be the beginning of the year book value, right? So if my ending for my first year is my 9,000, then that automatically becomes my book value for year 2, or my depreciation basis for year 2. Okay? So now here's a trend that we're looking at. We're noticing that now the depreciation basis is going to be changing every year based on the calculations that you've calculated for your book value. Okay? So here, go ahead and solve for the rest. What is my depreciation rate going to be?
40% again.
40% again. All right? And then if you calculate the rest, right, you should get 3,600. The depreciation, accumulated depreciation is now 9,600. So now my end of the year book value as of year 2 has now shrunken down to 5,400. Now notice this. We originally started with on the first year that it was 15,000. Because we have to depreciate 40% of it, right? It drastically changed, or the book value drastically changed, right? It's now almost a little more than half. It's 60% of what it used to be, right? Now, the one thing that you need to know about double declining is, which I forgot to mention, the purpose of having double declining is that when you utilize an asset, right, the idea behind it is that you tend to use the asset a lot in the beginning of its life. So for example, right, a brand new phone, you're so intrigued about figuring out how it works, etc., etc. You start using it way in the beginning of its life because you're just trying to figure out how to use it, what can you do with it, what are the options, etc., etc. But as you got used to it, and then, life happens, things come into play, you don't use your phone as often, right? Or another instance is when you use a computer, right? When you're in school, you'll use the laptop very, very in its very beginning of the stages. But once you graduate or you finish the class, then that computer just becomes, it just sits there. And maybe you use it every once in a while, okay? That is the same idea here. You're more likely to use the asset up in the beginning of its life versus towards the end of its life, you don't use it as much, okay? So that's why we use double declinings, because we need to depreciate it as much as we can in the beginning of its life. So therefore, that is where this formula comes into play, right? We have the useful life, right? It's supposed to last us 5 years, but if we're depreciating it twice as much, what conclusions can we say, right? If you're using an equipment, like a laptop's supposed to last you 3 years, but if you're using you're using a lot of it in the beginning of its life, do you think it will last the 3 years? Okay. So here, let's go ahead and take a look at this now that we solved for the second year, right? If I were to go ahead and solve for the third year, right? The estimated useful life that we gave this asset was 5 years. So in this case, year 3 rolls around, I've depreciated another 40%. So now I am down to 2,160 as my depreciation expense. And now my book value has dropped to 3,240. And it's only on year 3. Okay. Now what happens if I calculate for year 4? Same thing happens, right? I depreciate it 40% of the time. So now my book value has now dropped to 1944. Because the idea of this is that now I'm using it so much in the beginning of its life. So because I'm using it so much, I'm depreciating it twice as much because, I'm using it more frequently. Now, notice this. Now that I reach on the 4th year, okay, my book value is now 1944. What was my salvage value that I established? Do you guys remember? Okay, so in this case, my book value has dropped below my salvage value, which was 2,500. So in this case, the rule here is that your book value can never, ever, ever fall below or be less than your salvage value. Okay? So in this case, it hasn't even reached year 5 yet. So once again, the assumption is that if you tend to utilize the item more often and more frequently, you're more or less likely to, expense its life a lot quicker. So that's the same idea here, right? It just was 4 years old, and I've already depreciated to the point where it went below its salvage value. So because of that idea, we cannot accept 1944. We have to set it at 2,500. So if that's the case, then if I have to set my book value to equal my salvage value, therefore I need to replace this number with 2,500. Now, what does that even mean? That means I need to work backwards to kind of figure out my numbers, because I cannot depreciate more than what I have. And in this case, I'm supposed to be having a remainder of 2,500. So therefore, my depreciation expense must be adjusted accordingly. So if I need to adjust my depreciation expense accordingly to fit the value of my book value to be equal to my salvage value, how do I work backwards? So therefore, here is the example here. If I know for a fact that the formula to solve for book value is going to be your asset cost minus your accumulated depreciation, then by plugging in those X numbers, right? So we're doing basic math here. I know my value for my book value. It's going to be 2,500. And I know for a fact that my asset originally cost me 15,000. So if that's the case, then all I have to do is solve for the missing number. How do I get from $15,000 minus the X factor? How much do I need to take away in order to equal 2,500? Right? So we're going to be working the formula backwards to solve for the X number. So in this case, because I have other clues, right? I'm given my book value, I'm giving my asset cost. So at this point, if my asset cost is going to be like that, then how much is going to be my accumulated depreciation?
Would it be $12,500, or is that just?
That's correct. 12,500, right? Now that we solved for that, we need to go into one more contributing factor, because our most important factor that we need to look for, or that we need to solve for, is going to be my depreciation expense. I need to know how much I need to depreciate so I can journalize it. So now that I have one more key factor, right? I have the accumulated depreciation, okay? Now, taking the formula for my accumulated depreciation, we know for a fact that if I solve for this, my accumulated depreciation should equal my previous accumulated depreciation plus my current depreciation expense. Because I'm working backwards, I solve for my accumulated depreciation. Now I have another component in order to solve for my depreciation expense. So in this case, if that's the formula, Now I have to work backwards. I'm given my accumulated depreciation. I also know for a fact that my previous accumulation is going to be for the 11,760. So with that, though, with those numbers there, therefore, how much do I need to have for my depreciation expense to go from 11,760 to equal to 1250 or 12,500? 740 is what you're going to solve for, and that is correct. So in this case, if you guys remember way back then, if you solved for this, you would have gone over your, you would have gone way over the amount of depreciation, which results in a book value smaller than salvage value. So in this case, once I recognize that, that means by the 4th year, this is the end of my depreciation. So that's why it's very, 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 very crucial that you understand what I mean by time sensitive. That means you can't expect the asset to be 5 years. You can't even expect the asset to be less than 5 years, right? You just don't know because it just depends on what the rate that you are depreciating it at. So whether it's 40%, whether it's 20%, whether it's 60%, we don't know. That's going to be the factor that is going to determine how long the asset life is. But another contributing factor is that because we have a book value or a salvage value in place, therefore, at the end of its useful life, we made it clear that it has to hold some kind of residual value. And in this case, this exact problem here is we do have one. It's going to be 2,500. So therefore, if that's the end of its life, we need to work backwards to figure out how much depreciation expense can I incur for the last remaining years of its life. Okay? So therefore, we solved for 740 when originally it was more than that. Okay? Any questions here? Okay?
No.
So once again, what you're going to notice is that, once again, the estimated useful life doesn't have to be 5 years. It could be more than 5 years. It could be less than 5 years. We just don't know. Now, what you're going to notice here is that your depreciation basis is solely based on whatever you sold for your book value. This row here is going to constantly be changing. But what you're going to notice that the rate will stay consistent. It will always be 1 over its useful life times 2. So once you solve for one of them, you can automatically know exactly what the rate is at all times. And of course, your depreciation expense is going to change because of your depreciation basis. Okay? So that's key factors that you need to know here. So when you are using your fill handle tool or whatever it is, you just need to know that the only constant number that you'll have is going to be your rate. Your depreciation basis, your expense, and your book value are going to be the three most important things because, once again, you're depreciating. You're using the asset life twice as much than normal. So therefore, you can expect it to have a shorter life. Okay? And once again, it's based off of the beginning of the year's book value. Okay? Any questions here?
No,
Okay.
I don't think so.
All right. So once again, now we need to practice journalizing for the first year. So straightforward. How should my journal look like?
Start with the end year's date and then depreciation expense
Mm-hmm.
and then accumulated depreciation.
Correct. And whatever you solved in your table for depreciation expense, boom, right there. Okay. Same thing's going to go for year 2. But one thing that you need to know is that every year that you do your depreciation journal, it will be different because of the depreciation basis, because you're always looking at your book value. So in this case, it will always look different. The account's going to stay the same. The numbers are going to look different. Okay? So then now we're going to come into a play where we need to talk about our partial years. So for this example here, right? I purchased a machine, okay, for $10,000. Okay? And its useful life is going to be 5 years, and it has a capacity of producing 25,000 units. Okay, it has a salvage value of 2,500 at the end of its life, right? And this machine was put into service as of October 14. Record this depreciation. Okay, so in this case, let's look at this asset. When did we place it into service? In October. Okay. Now, what date do we actually place it in?
The 14th.
The 14th. So, what does that tell us?
That it's 1 month.
That you need to depreciate for the month of October. Correct. Okay. Now, assuming that the depreciation happens at the end of the year, right? So in this case, how many months can I depreciate this asset for?
3 months.
3 months, October, November, and December. Okay. So with that key thing that you need to know, let's go ahead and apply it to this scenario here. So if I'm depreciating this asset as of December 31st for the first year, how are we going to calculate the depreciation basis, the rate, and the expense? So let's start with the first one. What's the depreciation basis here?
10,000.
10,000. Good. Right? It's the beginning of the year book value. Good. 10,000. What is going to be my rate?
Are we gonna take? So I got a different number that I gotta measure. So we're gonna take the 1, divide that by 5, and divide that number by 3 to give us for the 3 months. Times 2.
Okay, you can technically do that, but it will be much easier if you just divide that 3 by for the depreciation expense. But that is a correct way that you can do it. But that actually makes things a lot more complicated. So let's go ahead and stick back with what we have, what we know. So in this case, what do we know for the depreciation rate?
It's gonna be 40%.
It's going to be 40%, right?
How
So
did you get that?
1 divided by 5 times 2. Depreciation rate. 1 over the use.
I was looking at the cost of asset again.
Okay.
The useful life is 5 years.
So even though it was only 3 months, we still used the full year?
Well, that's where I'm going to stop you there, is because you recognize that. How old is my asset?
3 months.
It's only 3 months, right? In this case, I'm doing it by year, okay? Now, can I depreciate my asset for a whole year?
No.
No, right? We treat our assets like our babies, right? The day that it was born or the day that you place into service is the day that you start depreciating it. So in this case, we recognize that that we only used it for 3 out of the 12 months, okay? Right? Because we're thinking about in terms of years, okay? So in this case, my asset is only 3 months old, right? So in this case, when I just multiplied it, right, I multiplied the 10,000 by the 40%, I get 4,000, right? But I can't think about it. So this is the depreciation for 1 whole year. I can't think about that because my asset is not 1 year old. It's only 3 months, right? So therefore, we need to solve for how much it's going to cost me for that month or for those 3 months. So there's 2 ways that you can take a look at it. You can determine the first thing is that, well, how many months, how old is it? 3 months. To put it in terms of years, if my asset is 3 months old in terms of years, how much can I say it's how old it is? Right? In this case, if I want to put it in terms of years, I would say it's 25% 25% old. Okay, or out of the year. Easy way to solve that is 3 divided by 12, right? There's 12 months in a year. So in this case, it's 3 out of 12, which equals 1/4, which is also known as 25%. So what you want to do is you can either take the 4,000, which is the depreciation expense for the whole year, and you can either multiply it by the 25%, or if you just want to keep it in fractions, which is completely okay as well, you can divide it by 4, you can multiply it by 3 and divide it by 12, right? Because those are going to be all the same thing. Punch it in your calculator, 4,000, right? Times 3, divide by 12. You're still going to get $1,000. You do 4,000 times 0.25. You're still going to get $1,000. You could take 4,000 divided by 4. You're still going to get $1,000. Okay, so this part is where you need to just recognize that how you want to do it, whether you want to keep it in fraction form or you want to calculate and compute the decimals to it, then you can do so as well. All right, whichever way that you get the answer, whether you use 25% or whether you use 3 divided by 12, or which is also known as 1/4, right? Whichever way that you recognize it, you go ahead and you multiply it to the depreciation expense, which in this case, right, 4,000 divided by 4 gives you 1,000, or 4,000 times 0.25 should give you 1,000. So that means I can only be subject to depreciate my asset for $1,000 because it's only 3 months old. I cannot write off the whole year because we don't treat our assets like that. We treat our assets like they're our babies. So in this case, it's only 3 months old, so therefore I can only depreciate it up to 3 months. Okay? Is everyone clear with that?
Yes.
Okay? So there you go. This way, so Felipe, you were saying you wanted to do it for the rate. You can do that for the rate, right? That's also another way that you can do it, right? Instead of doing 40% of the time, we can take 40% and we can multiply it by the 0.25%. So take a quarter of the 40. So in this case, it'd be 10%,
Yeah.
right? And you'd be able to solve for the same way too. But once again, the easiest way to look at it is just to take your overall depreciation expense, because we already know that's for the whole year, and figure out what is 3 months out of the 12 months. Okay? Right? Another way that you could do it is you could take the depreciation expense, divide the whole thing by 12 so you get a monthly number, and then multiply it by how many months that it already exists. Okay, that's another way that you can look at it. But at the end of the day, you're going to get the same answer. Okay? Now, once again, this is looking at a depreciation expense for the year. When we come across an example where you have to do it every single month, then that's where, yes, you do need to divide your depreciation expense by 12 because you're not looking for the whole year. You're looking for just that month. So that's another thing that you want to keep in mind too, that at the end of the given period, it depends on whether you establish it for doing depreciation. Do you want to do it every month or do you want to do it every year? Okay, so yes, make sure that you are aware of that. And I believe we do have an example of that today. Okay. So once again, then the depreciation expense is the accumulated depreciation is 1,000. Then we get the 9,000 as your remaining. Okay. Once again, how are we going to journalize this entry? How are we going to journalize the depreciation for the first year?
Depreciation expense.
Mm-hmm.
I forgot the second one.
Accumulated depreciation.
Accumulated depreciation. Excellent. For how much?
The 1,000.
For the 1,000. That's correct. Okay. All right. So once again, this is very time sensitive because once again, we need to know how old the asset is. So therefore, because when we deal with our depreciation expense, we're always going to solve for what it's going to be either for the year or for the month, right? And if it's like that, then we have to consider the contributing factors. How old is your asset really? Okay, so that's what I mean by time sensitive, or in this case, this is what we do when it becomes partial years. You can't calculate depreciation for the whole year because that's not how old the asset is. It's still it has a life, and when you start the life, it starts on the day that you place into service. So that's why those are considered the components that you need to be aware of. All right, perfect. Now here's the review. Once again, you don't need the whole chapter review part. All you really need to know is these formulas right here, right? You need to know how to solve for the depreciation basis, the rate, and the expense, right? Once book value falls below salvage value, this is where the table down below is where you're going to use these formulas to solve and work your equation backwards to be able to solve for the depreciation expense that is needed in order for your book value to be equal to salvage value. Okay, so here it's just taking these formulas and just moving them around. So if you understand basic algebra, that's exactly what this is, right? If A plus B equals C, then that means C minus A is also equal to B. All right? So once again, or A is also equal to B or to C minus B, whatever. They're all going to be the same components. You just have to kind of figure out what number you're plugging in or what number you're solving for. Okay? And once again, this depreciation method is primarily used for any assets that you decide that you want to utilize more in the beginning of its life. So I gave that example, right? When you go to school, you tend to probably use the laptop every single day. Once you finish school or you're done with school, then the laptop kind of just sits there and you touch it every once in a while. Okay? All right, and the one rule here that we need to know is your book value must always be equal to your salvage value. All right? Any questions in regards to chapter 11.2?
Nope.
All right, so once again, let's go ahead and take a look at our example here that we have for the class. Okay, so 11.2 depreciation method double declining exercises, question number 1. Okay, so here you purchase a cash register for $300. Okay, and it has no salvage value, right? And it has a useful life of 5 years, all right? And it can print up to 5,000 receipts, okay, before it needs to be re-maintenance. Okay? And of course, you place this cash register in service as of January 8th, all right? Now, assuming that you are depreciating at the end of the year, December 31st, let's go ahead and fill in our information here. What is our asset? What did we buy?
Cash register.
We bought a cash register. How much was the cash register worth?
300.
It was worth $300. Okay, so I'm going to put this in. $8 form. What's my salvage value?
0.
0. Okay, this is also very important that you know this as well, because when you are depreciating your assets, you have no final mark. Okay, and the useful life?
5 years.
5 years. Okay. And lastly, what's the date that I placed it into service?
8 of January.
8 of January. So what does that tell us if we're depreciating it at the end of the year?
We have a full year.
We have a full year. So of course I made this example easy, but when we move on to the next couple examples, it will not be easy. Okay. So once again, we're depreciating it for the full year. Okay. So let's go ahead and determine what the depreciation basis is going to be for this.
Well, you would start with your asset cost of 300.
So here, my beginning of the year book value is going to be 300. Right? What about my rate?
40%.
Right? It's going to be 1 divided by 5 times 2, which gives you 0.4. Okay? So therefore, what is going to be my depreciation expense?
120.
All right, so we're going to take my 300 and I'm going to multiply it by my 40%. It's going to give me 120. Okay? So therefore, what's my accumulated depreciation for year 1?
120.
It's going to be the same, 120. So then what's going to be my book value?
180.
All right? You need to take your asset cost. You're going to minus out the accumulated depreciation. So therefore, it is now 180. Right? Excellent. Now, what happens for year 2? What's my depreciation basis for year 2?
180.
Yes, remember, it's going to be the beginning of the year book value. So in this case, I solved for my ending of the year book value for year 1, which left me with 180. So in this case, I'm transferring that number over. So then, what's going to be my depreciation rate for the second year?
It's still going to be 40%.
It's still going to be 40%. So here, remember, if you guys remember, this is going to be constant. It's the only number that's going to be consistent throughout this entire formula. The only difference is going to be your depreciation basis and your depreciation expense and book value. So then, what is going to be my depreciation expense for the second year?
72.
72. Good. All right. Therefore, if it's 72, what is going to be my total accumulated depreciation for year 2?
Then when you get done with this year, can you give me a second to catch up?
192.
Right. We take 120. We're going to add our depreciation expense for that year, which is 72, to bring you a total of 192. Right? So therefore, what should be my book value at the end of year 2?
$8.
108.
Okay. Yes. Right? We're going to start with my 300, right? And we're going to subtract out a total of 192, which in fact give us 108. Okay. All right, Nicole, go ahead and
What was the equation for the rate?
I just typed it in. Oh, well, here, no, this one. I just typed in 1 divided by 5 times 2.
Why is it? Oh, 1 divided by 5. So the sorry, everything was freezing on my screen. The accumulated depreciation
For
is
for which one?
year 1. Oh, the previous year is 0
Yeah.
plus the current year makes it 120.
Yeah, so I just took whatever my depreciation expense was that for that year. I didn't even add in the 0. Okay, cuz
Okay.
there's nothing really there. So there's no need to do an addition problem when you know for a fact that you have 0. So in this case, I just copied it over, or I just said it was 120.
Okay. In order to bring the equation down from the depreciation, it would need to be the absolute number
Which one?
for the depreciation basis. Oh no, oh, that one is the book value.
Yes, these are either cell referenced or you can just type it in. It's the direct number from the book value. Yes. Now, you can have the choice to do that if you want to autofill your information in here. So in this case, I selected my 300, and that's my absolute cell reference because that's the number that's not going to ever change in your formula. And I just simply subtracted out whatever my accumulated depreciation was.
Okay.
But once again, if you're more comfortable with just typing everything in, you may do so.
Yeah, I think I would just type everything in so I can comprehend it
Mm-hmm.
easier.
Mm-hmm. So for example, right, I could just simply go 300 minus 192. Same thing. The only problem
Right.
here is that you definitely want to be careful because you can fat finger a lot of the stuff here. Okay? And once again, if I made a mistake here because I didn't cell reference it, if I made a mistake here, right, I put 190. It doesn't change my book value because I never cell referenced it. So I would have to fix both ends, and it just cell references, it just helps you make sure that when you do your transactions or you're entering your numbers, it changes everything in case you do make a mistake.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Mm-hmm. So there you
Okay,
go.
I'm on year 3 now.
Okay. So then, what's my depreciation basis going to be for year 3?
108.
108. So I'll just type it in with you. 108. Right? What's 108 times 0.4? So I can do that too. 108 times 0.4.
4320.
4320. Right? So what's going to be my accumulated depreciation? Once again,
23520.
235.20. And therefore, what's my book value going to be?
$64.
6480.
Mm-hmm. Good. So once again, for the depreciation basis for year 4, what is that going to be?
6480.
6480. Bringing my depreciation expense for that year to be
2592.
$25.92. All right. And then what is my accumulated depreciation for this year or for that year?
261.12.
$261.12. Therefore, making my book value
38.88.
$38.88. Okay, notice that we're getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. So now, therefore, my book value, my depreciation basis for year 5, right, is going to be my $38.88. Right? Now let's go ahead and do 40% of that. What's 40% of that?
15.55.
$15.55. Right? So what's my accumulated depreciation for that year then?
276.67.
$276.67. And lastly, so then therefore, what is going to be my book value?
23.33.
Good. So we still have $23.33 left, and we're on the end of year 5. So question to you, can we still keep going?
Yes.
Yes, we can, because one thing that we have here is that our book value has not equaled to salvage value. And on top of that, yes, it's time sensitive, but I still have a remainder of $23.33. Now, yes, you can keep pushing forward, or you can just write this asset off as a loss. Those are the two options, and that's going to be considered something that you need to learn in chapter 11 in your readings when you reach the part where it says disposal of the asset. Now, in this case, you can take a loss because it's chump change at this point, right? $23 is not a big deal, okay? But you can also, if this, what is this, a cash register? This cash register can keep going. Cash registers usually last a long time, especially if you have the new updated POS system, right? Where it's got a nice digital screen. Yeah, those are going to last forever. But if you have an old school one that has the digital numbers and the manual push button that pops out the register, then that one, you might be able to get away with it at least 7 to 10 years, depending on how frequently you use it. But most cases, cash registers, you always will always have the need for it. Okay? You'll always be using it. So in this case, yes, I can keep going if I'd like to. But do I have to? Absolutely not. You've already reached the end of its estimated useful life. You could still keep going, but the option is, if you keep going, you could probably keep going for a long time. Or you could choose to just stop at the 5 years of its estimated useful life and write off it as a loss. Okay? So, perfect. Now that we finished that example here, let's go ahead and finish question number 2 and question number 3. So question number 2 says that let's go ahead and journalize this entry, right, for the first year. So depreciation for the first year. So what should my journal look like?
Depreciation expense and accumulated depression.
Mm-hmm.
Appreciation.
Sorry, yeah.
No worries.
I talk good.
All right, depreciation expense. It's okay. It's a hard, difficult word, especially the accumulated part. Accumulated depreciation. Okay. For what value or what amount?
120.
120 was my first year's depreciation expense. So once again, I'm just going to go ahead and just format this using the comma. Okay. Boom. All right. Question number 3 says, go ahead and depreciate for year number 2. So once again, date's going to be December 31st. What's my journal going to look like?
You'll have the same descriptions, this depreciation expense and accumulated depression.
Mm-hmm.
depreciation.
Good.
And you would use your second years for $72 for the
Good.
debit credit.
Mm-hmm. You would debit your depreciation expense for $72, and you would also accumulate that $72. Okay. Excellent. Any questions in questions 1 through 3?
Can you scroll it up for a second and let me catch up, please? No,
Oh.
down to the journal.
Oh, okay. That's what I was thinking. I thought you filled the whole table out with me. I was confused for a second. But yeah, go ahead and finish this part up. Yeah, I was gonna.
Okay.
Okay. All right. All right. So let's go ahead and continue on with question number 4, 5, and 6. All right. This time, let me make it a little bigger so we can see a bit. So this time, question number 4 says that you purchased a computer for $1,988 even, right? That includes the fees and taxes, whatever. Okay, that includes everything. And it has a salvage value of $200. Okay. And here it says that the useful life of it is going to be 5 years, right? Typical, it's a computer, it's a technological asset, so its span should be no more than 5 years. And then it says you put this computer into service as of August 25th. Assume that depreciation is going to happen at the end of the year. Okay, so this is an example where I don't do years or I don't do months. It's the next one. So if I'm going to be doing this at the end of the year, right, and I place this asset into service as of August 25th, okay? So let's go ahead and fill in our little bubbles here or little sections here. So what did I buy?
Computer.
I bought a computer. How much was the computer worth?
1988.
$1988. How much was my salvage value for?
200.
$200. That means at the end of its life, it should be worth $200. What's my useful life?
5 years.
August 25th.
Okay, oh, that's the date that we placed into service. So here, August 25th. All right. So let's go ahead and depreciate it for the first year. So what's my depreciation basis going to be?
1988.
1988, right? We care about what it or the value of it is. And right now it is costing me 1988, okay? What's my rate going to be?
40%.
Right? It's going to be 1 over the useful life of 5 times 2 gives you 40%. Right? So then what's my depreciation expense going to look like?
You're going to take your depreciation basis times your rate, and then you're going to I used equal round. I times that number times the 4 months, which is 0.333.
Mm-hmm.
Gave me a total of 265.06.
265.06, okay.
795.20.
Okay, so remember, so Alan is on the right track. This is just depreciating it for a whole year. How old is my asset?
4 months.
4 months, right? August, right? August 25th. What does that tell us? When do we start depreciating? We start September. Good. So September, October, November, December. So therefore, it's only 4 months old. You cannot depreciate it for the whole year because you can't depreciate it because it hasn't even reached that old yet. So in this case, just by calculating the basic number right here for the whole year, it should be worth $795.20. That is to depreciate it for the whole year. I need to adjust it because it's not even a year old. It's only 4 months old. So in this case, I need to solve for you said 1/3 of the year. So in case, yes, so 4 months out of 12, if you simplify, that is 1/3 of the year. So you have the option here. You can take this $795.20 and divide the whole thing by 3 because you only need to take 1/3 of it because it's only 4 months old. It's only 1/3 of the year old. Okay? In other words, if you don't want to do it that way, you can also do, 4? You could times the depreciation basis by the rate and then times it by 4 and divide the whole thing by 12. You should get the same answer. You can also divide the whole thing by 12 and then multiply it by 4 and you should get the same answer. So in this case, let's go ahead and take a look at the most simplified way of doing it. So in this case, I'm going to do my equal round formula just in case my formula decides to spill all over the place or my numbers just don't come out evenly. So here I'm doing the basic one first, which is doing the depreciation basis times the rate. I know for a fact that my asset is 4 months old. And I'm going to divide that whole entire thing by 12 because that's out of the 12 months. It's only 4 months. Okay, I'm going to do a comma 2 to secure how many decimal places I want it to be. So in this case, my answer is 265.07 because this is 1/3 of $795.20, or also that's the answer that you should get. This is how much I can depreciate it for because it's only 4 months old. Okay. Now, yes, you could have done this without the equal round, but the thing is, if you do that, then your numbers can be off by a couple pennies. Okay. So any questions in regards to this particular how I got this answer kind of ordeal?
Yeah, I got kind of lost.
Okay. Where are you lost?
Am I the only one that's lost?
I'm lost. I kind of have an idea, but I'm needing to go over it again.
Okay. How old is the asset?
4 months.
4 months. How many months are in a year? 12. Okay. Now let's try that again. What you're doing is, so if I know for a fact that if I do depreciation basis times rate, this right here is to depreciate it for the whole year. Now, how old is my asset? It's only 4 months, right? So can I say I can depreciate my asset for a whole year? No, you can't because it's only 4 years old. You can't call your baby 1 year old if it's only 4 months old. So same idea here is now we need to split this cost, okay? Or to split this expense, okay? So if I know it's gonna cost, it's
So
gonna.
we would do the depreciation basis times the rate, right?
Correct. That's how you solve for how much it is for the whole year. Yes.
Okay.
That is for sure going to be there.
Okay.
Okay. Now, if I know my asset is 4 months old, and we know, right, 4 divided by 12, right, there's 12 months in a year. In terms of fractions or in terms of decimals, how much is that? What's 4 divided by 12?
0.2. .3333.
0.3333. You can, once again, so therefore that means that means 1/3 of the depreciation expense is going to be what I can depreciate my asset for. So in this case, you could do it in a fraction. So in this case, I would take my 795.20 and I'm going to times it by that 0.333333, right? Because that's what I solved 4 out of 12 to be, right? And in this case, I'm still going to get the same answer, 265.07. Okay? What was that, Nicole?
Maybe it's saying that it's a typo in my formula.
Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna try it one more time. Equals the basis times the rate, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then times the 0.333
Mm-hmm.
times 0.333. How much? Oh no, I didn't do equal round.
Okay.
265.04. I got the 265.04 because I did not do the equal round.
No. It's because you didn't add enough 3. I did I did like 6 or something. Yeah, I did quite a few, yeah. Again,
65.07.
mm-hmm. Now, if you don't want to use fractions, or I mean, if you don't want to use decimals, because again, if you don't type enough 3s or whatever number that you got, right? The easiest way to understand this is you can simply just put in the fraction right then and there. So right here, I'm taking my 795.20, right? That's how much my depreciation expense was for that year. How old is my asset? 4 months old. Divide the whole thing, or make that fraction, right? The 4 out of 12, right? 4 divided by 12, which is how much my asset is old, right? It's 4 out of 12. You'd produce the same exact answer. And this time you get a more accurate answer, because if you do 4, right, on the side, if you do 4 divided by 12, that's going to give you your 0.3333333. And because I'm avoiding adding all those extra 3s, I made it more simplified by just adding the actual direct number in there, like 4 out of 12. So that's the easiest way to do it. And that's the best way because you can punch this in your calculator. It will produce the same answer. And an even more accurate answer as well. Go ahead.
Can you click on E12? I just want to see your formula again.
E12. This one?
Yeah.
Oh, no, E12. Oh, this one. There's nothing in here.
No, sorry. One up, yeah. You had a different formula in there before, and I put it in, and I made a mistake, and I wanted to see it, but...
I think I did. Let me see. I think I did this one. Okay, that's one way that you could do it. But for me, I think the easiest way to do it, so instead of having to add all those extra 3s, right, you may not know exactly where to stop. So in this case, the best way to do it is just to do the straight fraction in there.
Okay.
Okay, Melinda, any questions? You had something to say?
No, I have it now. I got it now.
Okay, so yes, the easiest way to do this is just to put the fraction in there. You don't need to simplify it. You don't need to divide the whole thing by 3. As long as you understand how old is the asset. 4 months. How many months are in a year? 12. Boom. Okay. That's the easiest way to understand this formula right here. Right? We're not depreciating it for the whole year. We're only depreciating it 4 months out of the 12 months, which is a whole year. Okay. Right? Any questions there? Now, once again, because I'm using Excel, I'm going to go ahead and actually revert this and do an equal round. Now, you're not obligated to do it, but it will, if you're going to be typing in all your numbers, it will be very helpful to not do the equal round if you're typing in all your numbers. But if you decide to use cell referencing, that's where your decimal, your pennies will start coming out because the Excel hides all those extra numbers. So in this case, I'm going to use my equal round formula. I'm going to do my depreciation basis times the rate times the 4 months out of 12, comma 2, which is your how many pennies you want to round your answer to be. And there you go. I get the same exact answer. So once again, you're better off typing in your answers versus if that's the case, you're better off to just make sure that you type in your answers if you're not going to use cell referencing. Okay. So once again, what my accumulated depreciation for the first year should be the same. So therefore, what's going to be my book value, my book value at the end of year 1?
1722.93.
1722.93. So once again, I can easily just type in 1988, subtract out that 26507. You should get the same answer. Okay. 1722.93. Okay. So then, what is going to be my depreciation basis for year 2?
Book value from previous year.
Okay. What's my rate going to be?
40%.
Right? This, remember, right? If we understand that we solved for the first one, right, which is 1 divided by 5 times 2, 40%, it's going to be a constant figure. So this will always be 40%. Okay? Now, once again, what's my depreciation expense this time?
689.17.
All right, and that is for the whole year because once you finish this portion right here, your asset's going to stay into service until you finish depreciating it. So therefore, you did depreciate it for a whole year, right? If this one's only calculating from September, October, November, December, this one's going to be for the full year from January all the way to December. So in this case, this number is always going to be, it's going to be your full year. Now, because I'm using like those like numbers that are obviously not going to be divisible very clearly, I'm just going to use my equal round formula just so that I can be consistent in my numbers. So I'm going to go ahead and apply my formula. Once again, equal round, comma 2. Once again, you don't have to do it. If you want to type it in, you may do so as well. But in this case, I should get 689.17, which is what you guys said. Okay. So then, what is going to be my accumulated depreciation? Oh.
$954.24.
Yes.
And then book value of $1033.76.
Okay. So once again, I'm going to take my 1988 and I'm going to subtract out my 954.24 and I should get 1033.76. So good. Perfect. Okay. Okay. So then, what's going to be my depreciation basis for year 3?
$1033.76.
And then, once again, what's 40% of that?
$413.50.
Good. Okay. So therefore, what should be my accumulated depreciation?
136, 1367.75.
75 cents. So 4 plus 0.
$0.74.
Yes. So in this case, like I said, if you're not using equal round, that could be the reason. But in this case, we can look at it, right? Let's take a look. 954.24 plus 413.50. Does that give you? That should give you 74 cents.
Huh.
Yes. So once again, you might have a rounding error, whether it's in your depreciation expense or whether it's in your accumulated depreciation. Most likely, it's probably stemming from your depreciation expense. Because if you didn't put equal round, which I did, I rounded my answers. And if you just did a straight formula where you just typed in the depreciation basis times the rate, then most likely this is probably 413, 497, yada, yada, yada.
Huh. No, I didn't get
Okay, so like I said, if you want to, you could type in your answers or, yeah. Okay. So now that we have this, what is
the
going
book value is 620.26.
620.26. So once again, it's the 1988. Okay. Minus this 620.26. Is that what you said? 620.26?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes.
Good. So then, now, how do we solve for the depreciation basis for year 4?
Depreciation base is gonna be the last year's book value at 620 and
Mm-hmm.
26 cents. Then depreciation expense is gonna be 248 and 10 cents.
Good.
And then accumulated depression. I like that saying.
Okay, that's fine.
I know it's 16, 15, and 84 cents.
Good. So remember, 74 plus 10 gives you 84. Okay, 16, 15, 84. So therefore, what's going to be my book value?
1739.90.
1739.90. No.
372.16.
372.16 is correct. So I think you either added or you probably added, Nicole, because you got 13.
Let me see. Cost of asset minus accumulated. 372.60. Yeah, maybe instead I added instead.
Yeah. Okay, so good. All right. So therefore, we still got $372.16 left in my book value. So therefore, we can continue on to the 5th year. All right. So what happened as of year 5?
372.16 for the depreciation basis.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where our book value as at the end of the year has to be $200, correct?
Well, let's just go through it, solving the rest, and we'll answer that question in a second.
Okay.
The expense is 148.86.
148.86, and then good. 84 plus 86 should definitely give you an even number here.
1764 and 70 cents.
Excellent. So then what's my book value going to be?
223 and 30 cents.
We still got 223 and 30 cents. So here is where I'm going to tell you, okay? Can you keep depreciating it?
No?
Yes, you can. Okay. You still got $23 worth left.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and in this case, how old is my asset?
Useful life, 5 years.
Right.
Oh no, yeah,
Go ahead.
no, because we still had those extra months that we didn't start with at the beginning of the year, so we have 8 months left.
Correct. It's not even 5 years old yet. We're on the 5th year of depreciating it, yes, but my asset is still old. It's not old. It hasn't reached the end of its life yet. So in this case, we can depreciate it for the 6th year. So I'm gonna go ahead and add another cell here. Okay, insert. So 6, right? So let's go ahead and proceed just as normal. Here, what's my depreciation basis going to be for my year 6? Because I still got 8 months remaining. So what's my depreciation basis going to be?
223.30.
Perfect. Good. And once again, my depreciation rate should be the same. 40%, right? 1 divided by 5 times 2. So therefore, let's go ahead and what's my depreciation expense for this year?
89.32.
89.32. Let me equal round that real quick. Just so then I don't get any weird numbers. Oop. Okay, 89.32. Okay. What's my accumulated depreciation going to be?
18.54 and 2 cents.
18.54 and 2 cents. Good. And lastly, what should be my depreciation or my book value?
And 33.98.
Okay. Now, first things first is, how old is my asset?
Yours?
8 months old.
There's only 8 months remaining left. So in this case, my depreciation expense, this is for the whole year. So right here, this figure is wrong already. But here's another thing too. If we were to exhaust it for that whole year, what happened to our book value?
Salvage value.
It's below salvage value. So there's 2 ways that you can fix this. It's either you calculate its remaining life. Now remember, we're depreciating it twice as much. So at this point, we don't even know if it's going to even last us those 8 months. So the best thing that we could do is we're going to have to work backwards, right? We know what our end goal needs to be. It needs to be at 200. Okay? So here, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cross this figure out. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to place in that this needs to be strike out, strike through. Okay? That this value needs to be 200. Okay? Because that's what my salvage value tells me it needs to be worth at. It needs to have an ending book value at the end of its useful life, which in this case, right, I only have 8 months left, needs to have a remaining of the $200. Okay? So let's go ahead and work backwards. Okay? Now, if I know that I need to be to end at 200, how do I solve for my accumulated depreciation? Okay. Once again, what is my formula for book value?
The book value is the cost of the asset minus the accumulated depreciation.
Minus AQ D. Okay. So if that's the case here, what numbers do I actually have? What do I know from if I have to work backwards?
The 1988.
And what else?
1854.02.
1854.02. Okay. No.
Then
I have the cost of the asset. What else do I have? We're solving for the accumulated depreciation, right?
265.07,
Okay, how did you get that number?
because that's what it was the first year.
No. Okay, so in order to work backwards, right? What I need my ending book value
6602.
6602. How did you get that number?
I took the 200 minus the 133.98.
Not the 133.98.
The 80. Oh, would it be the 89.32?
Not the 89.32. All right, okay. Let's scratch out this whole entire row right here. That as in this doesn't exist at all. So what numbers do you have? We're
Oh,
saw
the 220. Oh. Nope, go ahead.
we know that our book value must equal 200. We also know what the cost of the asset is. What is the cost of the asset?
1988.
All right, and our figure that we need to solve for is the accumulated depreciation. All right, so let's do simple math. Okay, simple math. How do I get from 1988 to 200? How much do I need to subtract in order to get from 1988 all the way down to 200? 1788. Boom. All right. Simple as that, because we're given two numbers. We know what the asset cost is, and we know what the book value is because we need it to equal to 200. So we're working our way backwards now. Okay. So now, because I'm solving for this x, right? I know for a fact that I need to be at 200. I know that it's going to cost me 1988. That's the cost of the asset. So from here, right, I need to solve for what is this number I need to be to get from 1988 to equal to 200. And there you go, 1788. You take the 1988, subtract the 200, you should automatically get the 1788. Okay. Now that I'm given this piece of information, right, and I'm supposed to be clearing out, let me see, these two numbers don't exist anymore, right, because they can't be used. They're not correct. Okay, so these ones I have to adjust and work my way backwards, okay? So what's my formula to solve for accumulated depreciation?
Previous year's accumulated depreciation plus the current year's depreciation expense.
So of previous accum, deep, plus current deep expense, okay? So what numbers do I have, okay? Do I have my accumulated depreciation?
Yes.
Yes, right? It's the 1788, right? Do I have my previous year's accumulated depreciation?
1764 and 70 cents.
Yes, you have. It's 1764 and 70 cents. So therefore, I need to solve for my depreciation expense, which in this case, what would it be? How do I get from 17 or
1811 and 30 cents.
I got 2330.
2330 is correct.
Oh, plus.
Yeah, 2330. Okay. 2330 is going to be what's going to be replacing this. So in this case, I cannot depreciate my asset for $89.12 because one, that's for the full year. And two, that pushes my book value to be over my be less than my salvage value. In this case, because I know that information, I need to work my way backwards. Now, even if you do this is also another easy way too. Look at my book value at year 5. It is $230.30. What's my end goal? 200. So if I need to go from 23, or was it 233.30 to 200, how much is the difference between that? $23.30. Okay. Now again, I'm not going to expect you to know that, right? This is one of those in your face answers like duh kind of thing, but sometimes we don't see it right away. So in this case, I could have easily saw that right there, that all I need to do is depreciate it for $23.20 for me to get to my end goal of 200. Okay, because I know for a fact that my book value at year 4, which is also the beginning of my year's book value for year 5, I know I have $223.30 left remaining. How do I get from 223.30 to get to 200? Pretty straightforward, right? The difference between the two numbers is 23.30. So once again, if you can recognize it, then you can easily do the math a lot quicker. But if you didn't recognize that, then you have to work your way backwards by setting the book value to be the goal that you need to get to, and then work your way backwards by using math to solve for whatever missing equation you're missing. Okay? So that is that right there. So once again, go ahead.
Where did you get the 1788?
1788. That's going to be right here. So if I know my book value has to end at 200, right? So the formula for book value is equal to cost minus accumulated depreciation. So in here, right, if I know I need to be at 200 and I know my asset cost is 1988, how do I get from 1988 to equal 200?
I see it now.
So I put yeah, right here. Right. All right. 2 more questions left. So we have 5 and 6, right? Depreciate for the first year and depreciate for the second year. So what should my journal entry be?
Depreciation expense and accumulated depreciation.
Depreciation expense and accumulated depreciation. I'm going to do AQ for short. Okay, for how much for the first year?
26507.
26507. 26507. Right? Okay. And then last but not least, question number 6 says to do the depreciation for the second year. So what is going to be?
Text will be the same and the amount will be 689.17.
68917. Good. Okay. 68917. All right. Any questions or comments?
No, but like I do have one comment. So as you're doing yours, let's see, the amount of what was it, 689 or no, 413.50. I had 413.51, but had all the equal rounds and everything. So as I was listening, I was working with it. 1 3 made the difference. I only had like 5 3s. I put a 6 3, and that's the only way I was able to get it to equal the 413.50, I think it was. But it was weird. It was just like 1 3 less, whatever it was, threw me off a penny. So I went back through and I added that, and everything just with with doing cell references and everything, my formulas, everything came up. I just wanted to mention that because it was driving me crazy, and I thought, let's just add the extra 3 and it come out even.
So rule here is that I don't like to use decimal places, especially when you're dealing with a number that is like 1 divided by 3, right? You're going to have 3 going on forever. And that's the dangers of rounding too early or cutting off the number of 3s you need to add. So that's exactly why I prefer you to use 4 out of 12, because right there gives you the infinite amount of 3s without you having to type in 3. So again, I would prefer you guys to use fractions. You're going to get a way more accurate answer unless you have a certain circumstance where you're going to get an even fraction, such as 1/4 is going to be equal to 0.025, even no matter what, it's going to stay at. But only those kind of numbers. So especially when we're dealing with assets that are going to be having a useful life of 7 years, you're going to have to be able to compute the fraction on that. Okay, and trust me, that number is definitely not a nice number. It's definitely a very ugly number. It goes on and on and on and on. I believe it starts with 2, 8, then it repeats 4, 1, 2, 8, something like that, over and over and over again. So with that being said, that is going to be one of those things that you do need to be aware of, is if you are typing in your decimal places, the thing is you do need to be careful how many decimals you need to type in, or the best, like I said, the best way to keep it is just to keep the fraction in your Excel and let Excel hold all those extra numbers in there for you. Okay. Now, once again, this, you don't need Excel to do this for you. You can definitely do a pen and paper and calculator. All you have to do is just make sure that you know exactly what you're doing, because the formulas, none of it asks for you to do much except for multiply the numbers together. You don't need Excel for this. You can simply just use a piece of paper and be able to calculate the work itself, okay? Any questions in this exercise? So, obviously, the next section is we either take a break and come back, but we have nothing to come back to. So, all right, once again, any other extra questions?